Hi, this is a story called Cinderella, and if you like, you can read along with me to the story. It was adapted from the traditional tale told by many authors, and it's retold here by Jack Lowry. Once upon a time, in a kingdom far, far away, there was a little girl whose mother died when she was only 9 years old. A few years later, her father married a woman who had two daughters from her first marriage. The girl's stepmother and stepsisters were unkind to her, even cruel at times, but when her father was in the house, they pretended to be nice to her. 5 years later, when the girl had just turned 18 years old, her father got very sick and died. At this point, the girl's stepmother and stepsisters became cruel to her all the time. They turned her bedroom into a storage room for all their dresses and shoes, so she had to sleep on a quilt on the floor in the attic. Her stepmother forced her to do all the chores in the house. Because she often got dirty from cleaning the cinders out of the cooking stove and fireplace, her stepmother and stepsisters called her Cinderella. One day her stepmother came home and announced, "The king is throwing a great ball 2 weeks from now, on Friday and Saturday night, and we are all invited. The prince will be attending, and if one of my beautiful daughters can catch his eye, perhaps he might choose her to be his wife." Cinderella's stepsisters were certainly beautiful, but they were selfish and mean. They squealed with delight, and for a moment Cinderella even wondered if she might be allowed to attend. Her stepmother turned to her and said, "Cinderella, you will not be going, and we will need you to work extra hard to help us prepare for the ball." Cinderella was very sad to hear she wouldn't be going. She bowed her head and said, "Yes, my lady." Her stepmother wouldn't allow Cinderella to call her mother. As her stepmother and stepsisters talked excitedly about the preparations, Cinderella thought about how wonderful it would be if she could go to the ball in a beautiful dress, talk to people about pleasant things, listen to beautiful music, and maybe even dance. "Cinderella," snapped her stepmother, "you are coming with us to the dress shop. We need you to carry your stepsister's elegant dresses back to the house. And no sulking. You must accept that in this life you will rise no higher than the status of a servant." Cinderella bowed her head and said, "Yes, my lady." On the way to the store, as she walked behind her stepmother and stepsisters at a respectful distance, she wondered, "Why can't I decide what becomes of my life?" When they walked inside the dress shop, Cinderella was amazed at all the beautiful dresses, which were sparkling and featured so many different colors to choose from. A kind lady named Beatrice was the shop owner. She walked from behind the counter and greeted them and asked what they were looking for. The stepmother extended a hand in the direction of her daughters and said, "These two beautiful ladies would each like an elegant dress to wear to the ball." "Of course," said Beatrice, "we have hundreds of dresses to choose from." The stepmother turned to Cinderella. "You stay here by the door, and don't touch anything, or you'll get it dirty." Cinderella bowed her head. "Yes, my lady." Beatrice could hear the conversation, and she wondered why the lady treated the girl so unkindly. The two stepsisters, after trying on dresses for more than 2 hours, finally found what they and their mother believed were the two most beautiful dresses in the entire kingdom. Beatrice carefully folded each dress into a separate box. The stepmother asked, "Could you wrap each box in coarse paper? My servant will carry them home, and I don't want her to dirty the boxes." While Beatrice was wrapping the boxes, the stepmother turned toward the door and said, "Cinderella, wipe your hands and arms on your skirt and come here. You are to carry these boxes home and not get them dirty." Cinderella bowed and said, "Yes, my lady." She walked up to the counter and picked up the boxes. She looked up at Beatrice and said, "Thank you, ma'am. You have a lovely store." "Goodbye, dear child," said Beatrice. When they had left the store, Beatrice thought about how kind and noble Cinderella had acted, even though she had been treated so rudely. There's something special about that young lady, she thought. The next evening, after Cinderella had finished her chores, she walked back to the dress shop and said to Beatrice, "Ma'am, if you would let me borrow a dress for just 2 nights, I'll repay you by cleaning your store every night for 2 weeks." Beatrice looked at her and smiled. "And why, dear girl, do you want to sacrifice so much to receive so little?" Cinderella said, "Because I want to go to the ball. I want to know what exists beyond the life I live now." "Let me think about it. First, do you know how to clean?" "That's one of my many duties at home, my lady." "Okay, let's try this. Come to my store tomorrow at 6 in the evening, and if you do a good job, I'll agree to your conditions." "My lady, can I come at 8 instead? I have other obligations until that time." What she meant was she would finish her chores at home, pretend to go up to the attic to sleep, and then sneak out the back of the house so she could work in the dress shop. "That's fine," said Beatrice. "The store closes at 10, so if you can work 2 hours each night for 2 weeks, I'll let you borrow a dress for the 2 nights of the ball." Cinderella smiled and bowed her head to Beatrice. "Thank you for the opportunity, my lady. I will work very hard for you." "Please call me Beatrice. And how should I address you?" "They call me Cinderella." "Okay, Cinderella." Beatrice wanted to know how the young lady had gotten that name, but she didn't ask. The next night Cinderella finished her chores at home, pretended to go upstairs, and snuck out the back door. She walked across town to the dress shop, where she worked hard cleaning the shop and even organizing the stockroom. She loved working in the stockroom because she got to see so many different styles of dresses. Every night for 2 weeks Cinderella worked in the dress shop without her stepmother or stepsisters knowing what she was doing. On Cinderella's final night of work, which was also the night before the ball began, Beatrice called her to the front of the store. "Cinderella, you have worked hard and learned a lot about styles of dresses in the past 2 weeks." "Yes, ma'am. I am forever grateful for the opportunity you've given me." "Now it's time for you to receive your dress. As we agreed, you will borrow it for Friday night and Saturday night, and you will return it to me on Sunday morning before the shop opens. You may now choose your dress." Cinderella's eyes widened in anticipation. "I'll be right back." She quickly returned with a gold-colored dress that was pretty but had no decoration on it. "My dear, that dress isn't even finished, and the slippers that go with it aren't finished either. Are you sure you don't want to choose another dress?" "With your permission, I'd like to sew the decorations onto the dress and slippers myself. I promise to do a good job." Beatrice thought for a moment. "Okay, here's a box of cheap broken necklaces and some fake jewels I haven't sorted out yet. Use whatever pieces you need, and make them look pretty. You can borrow this tiara, too. It's missing some pieces, but I'll give you some glue." Cinderella smiled. "Thank you so much. I'll create a beautiful pattern of jewels everyone will notice. Can I decorate the slippers, too?" "Do whatever you think makes it look extraordinary." Cinderella thanked Beatrice again and headed home with a big box and a little box. She walked back home and quietly went to her room in the attic. She opened up the big box, slipped a hanger into the neck of her dress, and hung the hanger from a nail in the rafter. She opened the box of jewelry into the big box and spread out the necklaces, bracelets, and jewels. She examined the tiara and decided she could glue a couple of jewels in the right places and it would look just fine. She thought about all the patterns she could use for decorating the dress and slippers. She was happy, but also a little tired from the busy day, so she decided to say her prayers and go to sleep. She would make a decision on the design the next day. When she woke up the next day, she could see a hint of the morning sun from a little window in her attic room. She quickly got out of bed, brushed her teeth, and worked for 3 hours sewing the jewels into the dress before she had to go downstairs and start the fire in the cooking stove and prepare breakfast for her stepmother and stepsisters. While she was setting the dining room table, Her stepmother entered the room and said, "Cinderella, we will be busy all day going to the hairdresser, having our nails done, and dining out with friends. Don't cook lunch or dinner for us, but we'll need you at 8 o'clock sharp to help us prepare for the ball. The coach will be picking us up at 9. "Yes, my lady." Cinderella was so happy to have the extra time during the day to work on her dress and slippers. "And one more thing. We need you waiting outside the house for us when our carriage arrives at midnight. We want the coachman to know we have servants." She corrected herself. "Well, one servant." "Yes, my lady." Cinderella considered her time management challenges. How can I see them off at 9, get my dress on, make it to the ball, and be back home and out of my dress at 12:30? If I'm late, my stepmother will know I was at the ball. What would she do to me? She spent the day working on her outfit and planning her evening. When the coach arrived at 9, Cinderella waved goodbye to her stepmother and stepsisters. As the coach was pulling away, her stepmother yelled out the window, "Remember, 12:30 sharp." When the coach was out of sight, Cinderella ran back into the house and quickly bathed in the small bucket in the attic. She was forbidden from using the tub in the downstairs bathroom. She combed her hair out. Almost no one had seen her hair at full length because she always kept it covered with a dark rag to keep the cinders and dirt out. She put on her dress, slippers, and tiara. She had a tiny mirror the size of her palm, and she looked into it and angled it around. She couldn't recognize herself. "Not half bad when I clean up," she thought. Although she hadn't finished decorating her dress and slippers, she had created a wonderful swirling pattern with the jewels. "I'll add more jewels tomorrow," she thought. She put a large cloak on so no one could see the dress she was wearing, and she covered her sparkling slippers with old slippers that she usually wore in the attic. She hurried downstairs, and just before she stepped outside, she remembered to take off her tiara and put it in one of her cloak pockets. She walked through some back streets and crossed a wheat field. When she got within view of the grand castle, she stepped into a barn holding the king's horses. She put on her tiara and took off her cloak and old slippers. She wrapped the old slippers in the cloak and hid the bundle behind the barn door. As she walked toward the magnificent castle, she took a deep breath. For the first time in many years, she felt truly happy. As she walked into the crowd of well-dressed people talking and laughing at the foot of the steps of the castle, she admired the beautiful dresses the other women wore. She noticed heads turning in her direction. "Why is everyone staring at me? Is something wrong?" she wondered. Once she got inside the castle, she stopped before a full-length mirror and tried to casually look at herself. She didn't see anything torn, dirty, or on fire. A young, elegantly dressed lady walked up to her, gently squeezed her right hand, and asked, "Who are you?" Before Cinderella could answer, the lady pulled on her hand and said, "Just come with me." The lady turned and led Cinderella through the crowd. "You look gorgeous, my child. Everyone is talking about you. Come with me to the ballroom and let's see who will ask you to dance. My husband is busy talking business with his friends, and I will entertain myself by listening to the music, eating sweets, and protecting you from the dance requests of the rogues and ruffians." When they entered the ballroom, Cinderella stood with her newfound acquaintance and looked in amazement at the sparkling chandeliers, the splendid paintings, even on the ceiling, and the elegantly dressed aristocracy. She had never seen such things in her life. The music coming from the orchestra was soft and harmonious, much different from the melodies coming from the tavern she walked by or from the street musicians in the town square. This music had a gentle rhythm that made her want to go out on the dance floor and move to it. "But I don't know how to dance," she thought. As she was thinking this, she sensed a parting of the crowd to her right side. Her acquaintance grabbed her arm, whispered into her ear, "It's the prince," and stepped back. Cinderella turned to her right and saw, standing before her, a handsome, elegantly dressed man with sparkling eyes and a kind smile. "May I have the honor of dancing with you?" he asked in a gentle voice. "Why, yes, but I'm afraid I don't know how to dance," said Cinderella, blushing. "If you will permit me, I'll wait here with you until we hear a song we can dance to more easily than this one." They never did dance together that night. The prince was so enthralled with the conversation he was having with the mysterious young lady. He loved her wit, her gentle ways, and her intelligence. She seemed to notice the little things in life that he didn't have time for in his duties as prince and heir to the throne of a great kingdom. He had never met anyone like her. After 2 hours' worth of fascinating conversation with her about life, philosophy, music, and nature, the prince asked Cinderella if she'd like to try a special chocolate dessert that had sugared cherries on the inside. Cinderella agreed and bit into the treat. "This is so delicious. I've never tasted anything like this before." "Yes," said the prince, "these sugared cherries are found in a land far south of here. They're quite rare in the springtime." Cinderella laughed. "I mean the chocolate. I've heard people talk about it, but I've never tasted it before. I love it." The prince looked at her and softly asked, almost to himself, "Where are you from?" And then the grand clock of the castle struck the first sound of midnight. Cinderella looked up at the prince. "I'm sorry, my lord. I must go now. I hope to see you again tomorrow." She turned and ran off, and the prince was so stunned he didn't even run after her. What just happened? He asked himself. Was this a dream? Cinderella hurried out of the castle, turned the corner, and slipped into the barn where she had hidden her cloak. She put on the old slippers, wrapped the cloak around her, put the tiara away, and started walking home. She was in such a hurry on her way home, she didn't even think about the wonderful time she had just experienced. Instead, she worried about what would happen to her if she didn't get home in time for the coach. Fortunately, she did make it home with enough time to run up to the attic, change clothes, cover her hair with the old rag, and put on her tattered shoes. With about a minute to spare, she was standing outside the house when the coach arrived with her stepmother and stepsisters. "Here's one of our many servants," her stepmother said loud enough so the coachman could hear her. "Some are ordained to rule and others to be ruled." Cinderella bowed her head and said, "Welcome home, my ladies. I hope you had a good time." One of the stepsisters said, "The best time was had by a stunning young lady who had the attention of the prince for most of the evening. I have no idea who she was." The other stepsister chimed in, "Rumor has it she comes from one of the noble families in the eastern part of the kingdom. I've never seen a dress that splendid." Cinderella helped them out of their dresses and prepared the water for their baths. When they had retired for the night, she went up to her attic room, lay down on her bed, and thought about her wonderful night and fell fast asleep. She woke up early the next morning and immediately began sewing and gluing more cheap, sparkling jewels onto her dress and slippers. Then she went shopping at the market for food, came home, started the fire in the cooking stove, and prepared breakfast for her stepmother and stepsisters. At breakfast, her stepmother, while chewing hard on a piece of bacon, said to Cinderella, "Today we will be busy shopping, dining, and we might even watch a play. Once again, you will help us prepare at 8, have us ready by 9, and be waiting for our coach when it returns at midnight. Do you understand?" "I do, my lady," said Cinderella as she bowed her head. That evening, as soon as the coach was out of sight, Cinderella got ready for the ball, put on her cloak and old slippers, and walked quickly back toward the castle. As she had done the night before, she hid her cloak and old slippers just inside the barn. As she walked toward the castle, she felt more confident than she had the previous night. This time, if she noticed people staring at her, she didn't assume they stared because there was something wrong with her or her clothing. She walked up the steps and turned toward the ballroom. She entered the grand hall, stood near the edge of the dance floor, and admired the smell of the pastries and chocolate treats, the sound of the music from the orchestra, the twinkling of the chandeliers, and the warm feeling of being around people who are having a good time. Within 3 minutes the prince approached her. He stood before her, smiled, and said, "Our conversation was so stimulating last night that I'm afraid we didn't have time to dance. If I asked you again to dance with me, what would you say?" Cinderella looked into his eyes and said, "I don't know. Ask me." The prince smiled even more broadly and looked at her with admiration. "Would you do me the honor of dancing with me twice tonight, once for last night and once for tonight?" "I'd be honored, but be warned, I still don't know how to dance." "And I still don't know anything about you except that you're a fascinating person to talk to. And you leave very quickly." "I'm so sorry about that. Time flies by when I'm with you." "I'm just happy you came back." Once again they talked for almost 2 straight hours and didn't even get around to dancing. When the clock rang the first tone of midnight, Cinderella jumped as if startled from a dream. "Dear sir, you are so wonderful. I've had so much fun talking to you, but I have to go now." "Again? What is it about midnight?" he asked. "It's too complicated to explain in just a few words," she said. "I'm sorry." She turned and ran off. Once again the prince was stunned. "Is this the same dream?" he asked himself. "Who is she?" She ran down the steps so quickly that she didn't realize she had lost a slipper. She didn't notice it was missing until she had reached the barn. She didn't have time to go back and look for it. The prince ran after her, and when he was halfway down the steps, he saw her slipper. He picked it up, ran to the bottom of the steps, and looked to the left and to the right. He couldn't find her because once she had covered up her sparkling dress with the dark cloak, she blended in with the darkness of midnight. She hurried home and was just barely in time for the coach. She helped her stepmother and stepsisters into the house and out of their dresses. Then she went up to the attic and lay down to sleep. She thought about how wonderful the night had been and how she would never see the prince again. She cried herself to sleep. She woke up early the next day and packed her dress, tiara, unused jewels, and one slipper. She felt bad about losing the slipper, but she vowed she would make it up to Beatrice. On her way to the dress shop, she thought about the prince. His station in life was so much higher than her own. Even if he did have feelings for her, his family would probably not allow him to marry a poor servant girl. She hoped he remembered their conversations. "He doesn't even know my name," she thought. As soon as she entered the dress shop, Beatrice came from behind the counter and said, "Tell me everything." It was incredible. It was like being on the moon. It was so different from my normal life. She told Beatrice about the castle, the paintings, the music, and the chocolate. She didn't mention the prince. "Thank you for everything, Beatrice." Cinderella opened up the boxes and then remembered the lost slipper. "Beatrice, I lost a slipper when I had to hurry home. I want to pay you back, so can I come here and work some more until I've repaid you?" "Ha! Keep this slipper as a memento, and leave that other slipper wherever it lies," said Beatrice as she looked over the dress Cinderella had decorated. "You don't owe me anything. You did a beautiful job on this dress. I'm going to make a nice profit on this, and I'm going to share some of it with you." Then she thought for a moment. "Cinderella, do you want a job here?" "Thank you for the offer, but I don't think I'll be going to any more royal balls anytime soon." "I mean a real job, where you decorate dresses for me and I pay you money." Cinderella was stunned. She had always thought her destiny was to be a poor servant. I've always served my stepmother. She needs me to take care of her and her daughters." "Cinderella, you just take a dress home, decorate it with the same artistry you showed on this dress, and I'll pay you half the profit I make on it. Fair?" "That would be wonderful." She gave Beatrice a hug. "I'm so glad I met you." "I feel the same, dear child." A week passed, and Cinderella went back to taking care of her stepmother and stepsisters. But her life felt different because of what she had experienced at the ball. Plus, she was now making extra money decorating dresses for Beatrice. She saved her money underneath her quilt bed and hoped to eventually be able to move out and find a place of her own. She didn't even think about dating. The man she cared about was beyond her reach. Little did Cinderella know that ever since she had left the prince's sight, he had been looking everywhere for her. All he had were memories of her and one slipper. He went to the fashionable shoe shops in town and asked if that style of slipper had been sold there. No one recognized the slipper, and most said the design was unique. One store owner told the prince that perhaps the slipper was sold as part of a whole outfit. So the prince went to each dress shop in town, and one morning he walked into Beatrice's dress shop. He showed her the slipper, and Beatrice instantly knew who had worn it. She wrote down Cinderella's address, but not her name, and gave the slip of paper to the prince. The prince hurried to Cinderella's house and knocked on the door. Since Cinderella was out shopping for food, one of the stepsisters opened the door. She was amazed to see the prince. She invited him inside and yelled for her sister and mother to come. The prince said to them, "I'm looking for the lady who wore this slipper to the ball." The stepsisters looked at the slipper and both immediately claimed it. They started pulling on it, and in their excitement they both fell to the floor. While watching the two women fighting over the slipper, the prince heard the front door close behind him. He turned and saw a young lady holding two baskets of food. She was dressed in dirty clothes, and he couldn't see her hair because it was covered by a rag, but her eyes seemed familiar. "You're finally back," yelled her stepmother. "Hurry and fix our lunch." "Yes, my lady," she said. When she looked up and saw the prince, her eyes got wider. She regained her composure and bowed her head. "Good day, my lord. This is an honor." She turned and walked directly to the kitchen and began preparing lunch. The prince was amazed. Could that be her, he thought. He walked into the kitchen and found Cinderella washing vegetables in the sink. He said to her, "I feel like I've met you before." Cinderella looked into his eyes and said, "My lord, we have met." "Are you—" He couldn't even finish his sentence. "Yes, my lord, I am the woman at the ball who doesn't know how to dance and who had never before tasted chocolate." "May I ask you, what is your name?" The stepmother walked into the kitchen. "Cinderella! The prince does not have time for a servant girl. He wants to know which of my daughters that slipper belongs to." The prince turned towards Cinderella and said, "I think I know to whom that slipper belongs." The stepmother laughed. "My lord, it cannot be hers. She wasn't even at the ball. She is a servant and nothing more." The prince didn't take his eyes off Cinderella. He said to her softly, "I have proof enough, but if you could show the slipper's match," and he motioned toward the stepmother, "this fine lady of the house might be convinced." Cinderella calmly walked out of the kitchen, and when she got to the foot of the stairs, she quickly tiptoed up to the attic. When Cinderella came back downstairs, she found the prince holding the slipper that her stepsisters had been fighting over. She walked up to the prince, handed him the other slipper, and said, "I believe this is a match, my lord." The stepmother cried out, "How?" The prince looked into Cinderella's eyes and said, "I know we don't know everything about each other yet, but I think I'd like to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you please come with me and be a guest at my uncle's castle? He and his wife are a duke and duchess, and they love music like you do. And the duchess can teach you how to dance." "I would love to learn," said Cinderella. So Cinderella stayed with the duke and duchess, and she saw the prince every day. They quickly fell in love, got married, and lived happily ever after. The end. I hope you enjoyed the story. And if you'd like to listen to some other stories, some shorter than this, some longer than this, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, or you can click on the links that you see on the screen right now. And I hope you have a great day. Thanks for listening. Bye.